stoppers, but I don't know.
I'm Audrey Mustin, and I'm doing an ethics presentation about white lies. My general question is, how can telling white lies be ethically justified? So, to put that in a little bit more context, we have to define what a white lie is. So, for this presentation, I'm going to use the definition of white lies. White lies are minor lies which could be considered to be harmless or even beneficial in the long term. White lies are also considered to be used for the greater good. And also keep in mind that omitting parts of the truth is also considered a white lie sometimes. So I want to read this poem to kind of get us thinking about an example of white lies. So this is The History Teacher by Billy Collins. Trying to protect his students' innocence, he told them the Ice Age was really just the Chilly Age, a period of 1,000,000 years when everyone had to wear sweaters. And the Stone Age became the Gravel Age, named after the long dryways of the time. The Spanish Inquisition was nothing more than an outbreak of questions, such as, how far is it from here to Madrid? What do you call the matador's hat? The War of Roses took place in a garden, and the Enola Gay dropped one tiny atom on Japan. The children would leave his classroom for the playground to torment the weak and the smart, mussing up their hair and breaking their glasses, while he gathered up his notes and walked home past flower beds and white picket fences, wondering if they would believe that soldiers in the Boer War told long, rambling stories designed to make the enemy nod off. So, throughout that poem, the teacher is telling lies to his students. And I consider these lies to be white lies because he's telling them with the purpose or the intent of protecting their innocence from knowing about sad things in history or bad things in history, I guess. But he was giving them wrong information or not what he knew to be the full truth. So while his intent was to protect them, his lies kept his students from learning about the dangers of conflict. So he had an intention to protect them, but it ended up that wasn't the consequence. And he still remained blind as he walked home past the white picket fences and everything. He remained blind to the real consequences of his telling the lies. So to me, that is an example of how even when there's a good intention behind a lie, it can have negative consequences, and the person who tells the lie with a good intention may never know what those negative consequences are. Okay, so one way to ethically justify lying, and specifically white lying, or telling white lies, is through the deontological theory. So this lady from University of Manitoba, I think, she explains it, deontological theory, better than I can, so we're going to watch a little bit of this.
One of the questions we've been asked is what an ethicist would say about lying, and if it's ever all right to lie to somebody. One of the most famous statements of lying comes from a philosopher named Immanuel Kant. He said it's never okay to lie for the simple reason that you couldn't universally will lying. If everybody lied all the time, lying wouldn't even work because nobody would believe you anymore. So it's the way in which lying takes advantage of the general convention of truth-telling. And so you're sort of free-riding on the practice of most people telling the truth most of the time.
Okay, so that sort of explains a little bit about the deontological theory of lying.
Can somebody help her out with the mouse, please?
I guess.
So basically what she was saying was that, basically what she was saying was that because it's an incomprehensible world if everyone is lying, that under the deontological theory, telling lies is unethical. And this applies further to white lies because there's still lies. In the deontological theory, there's a lot less room for, it's a lot more absolute than the utilitarian, so I think there's less. Okay.
Pretty good show.
Yeah, so it's an incomprehensible world because people wouldn't be able to trust each other, and that's how lies work, is that they work because because people often trust one another. But one thing to consider is if the only consequences of white lies were those originally intended, it might be possible to ethically justify them through the deontological theory, because if no one was hurt by them, it may be a comprehensible world. Through the utilitarian theory, the question we have to ask ourselves is, would lying or telling the truth result in the best overall consequences? So there are two views of the utilitarian theory of ethics. One is act utilitarian, and one is rule utilitarian. People who think from the perspective of act utilitarian believe that in particular cases, breaking the utilitarian rule may lead to the best consequences, so breaking the rule can be ethical. And rule utilitarians believe that because in general an act causes negative consequences, it is never ethical. So these are based on consequences, and like the poem I read at the beginning, The History Teacher, there can be good consequences even when and bad consequences, but if there are negative consequences, rule utilitarian and act utilitarian would both say that it's unethical. If there are good consequences from telling a white lie, then act utilitarian could justify telling a white lie, but really rule utilitarian would not, because in general telling white lies can cause negative consequences. Okay. So some additional questions about telling white lies and how to ethically justify that are, to what extent are white lies more ethical in one area of knowledge than in another? And I kind of want to open these up for discussion, but I was thinking along the lines for that question of, is it different to tell a lie in math than in human sciences? How is telling a lie different through different perspectives? Taylor?
I mean, for me, math is the one of the very few areas where there is a definite answer to every question. It's not like this could be right, but this one is more right, or this you can consider it either way. With math, it's just one answer. So by telling a lie in math, essentially you're just giving the wrong answer. But in something like human science and ethics, there are a lot of different facets to the answer and a lot of different perspectives you can take to coming to that answer. Mm-hmm. So telling a white lie is a lot more complicated in different areas of knowledge than it is in like math.
So could it be considered more or less ethical to tell a white lie if it is about the conclusion, or if it is something that would lead someone to a wrong conclusion? You know, like if in math you tell a lie and it's just you're telling the wrong answer, is that more or less ethical, do you think, then? Or I know that's hard, but how is that different?
I don't know. I think telling a lie in history, even though it's history, it can be viewed in different ways. But like, he was blatantly lying about certain wars and stuff, and like, if you just like made up a lie about the Holocaust to hide the like harsh reality, then you're kind of just putting kids in a little bubble and making them think that, oh, the world's this like wonderful, happy place, and